The moment she said it, the words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. Honestly, you're such a doormat. She laughed, swirling her mimosa as if it were nothing, the words carrying a weight that nobody at the brunch table could ignore. I froze mid-bite, my fork hovering over my plate of scrambled eggs, my stomach dropping in a way I hadn't felt in years. Around us, the chatter of clinking glasses and cheerful small talk evaporated into an uncomfortable silence. Every head turned toward our table, eyebrows raised, mouths half open in stunned disbelief. I wanted to laugh it off, to brush it aside like a bad joke. But something inside me snapped. That laugh, that casual cruelty wasn't new. It had been hiding beneath the surface for months, buried under the polite smiles and the way she kissed me goodbye each morning. I'd noticed the eye rolls, the subtle impatience, the sighs whenever I mentioned my day or asked for a simple favor. But I told myself it was stress, that I was being sensitive. Yet, sitting there, watching her make a spectacle of my quiet devotion, I felt a cold clarity wash over me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My hands clenched into fists under the table. She blinked, a little startled, as if she hadn't expected me to respond. "What?" "I'm just joking," she said, her smile tight, defensive. The room held its breath, everyone sensing the tension, even if they didn't know the history that made these words hit so hard. My brother-in-law shifted uncomfortably, my best friend coughed into his coffee, and even the waiter lingered a few feet away, pretending not to notice. "No, you're not joking," I said, standing up so suddenly my chair scraped the tile floor. "You don't get to call me that, and then laugh it off in front of everyone." Her face hardened, and for the first time in years, I saw the person I had married and the stranger she had become as two separate entities. "Oh, come on," she said, her voice sharp now, tinged with irritation. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke. Everyone's laughing." "No," I said, my chest tight, my voice low but firm. "They're silent because they know. They know it wasn't a joke." I didn't wait for her to respond. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her and the stunned table behind. The door swung closed behind me, and the cool November air hit my face, sharp and bracing, as if the universe itself were urging me to wake up. I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly through the city, past streets I knew by heart, past the apartment we had chosen together, past the little bookstore where we had our first date. Every familiar sight was now tinged with a bitter, bitter realization. I didn't know the woman I married anymore. And worse, I never had. By the time I returned home, the apartment was empty, eerily quiet. She wasn't there. My keys clinked against the counter as I tossed my coat aside, and I noticed the little things I'd never paid attention to, the lipstick smudge on the coffee mug, the faint perfume that didn't smell like her usual fragrance, the unopened letters on the table from a bank I didn't recognize. I should have known. I had felt it for weeks, subtle signs I had convinced myself were paranoia. Late nights at work, texts she quickly hid when I walked into the room, phone calls she didn't want me to overhear. I had ignored all of it, because loving someone shouldn't be this exhausting, I told myself. Loving someone meant trust. Loving someone meant believing the best, even when the worst was staring you in the face. I found the truth on her phone. She had left it unlocked, carelessly, a fatal mistake. Messages, emails, photos, evidence of a life she had been living without me. A life that made our marriage a lie. And there was him. Always him. I didn't cry at first. I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen, numb, until the reality seeped into my bones and the betrayal made my chest ache like I had been punched 100 times. She wasn't the woman I thought I knew. She had never been, not really. And everything I had believed, our life, our love, our promises, was a carefully constructed illusion. When she came home hours later, expecting me to be waiting, perhaps to apologize for overreacting, she found the apartment dark and cold. I was sitting at the edge of the bed, her phone discarded on the nightstand, a quiet storm brewing behind my eyes. "We need to talk," she said, hesitantly, sensing the gravity that I hadn't even spoken. "I already know everything," I said, my voice steady, calm, but carrying a weight that made her falter. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. You went through my things?" "I had to," I replied. "Because you've been going through this marriage as if it were disposable. You lied. You cheated. You laughed at me in front of people I care about." She opened her mouth, closed it again, tried to form words but none came. I could see the shift, the sudden vulnerability, the realization that the world she had created for herself, where I was a joke, where I was a doormat, had crumbled in a matter of hours. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't cry. I simply stood, gathered my coat, and placed her phone gently on the dresser. "I'm done," I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it with every fiber of my being. "I'm done being your punchline. I'm done pretending that this marriage was what I thought it was. I'm done being invisible to the person I love the most." She reached for me, a desperate gesture, but I stepped back. The silence stretched between us, heavier than any argument we'd ever had, filled with everything unsaid, everything betrayed. And then I walked away, out of the apartment, out of the life I thought I had, but had only been building on lies, out of the love that had been one-sided for too long. The next morning, the reality of freedom and grief hit me all at once. I was alone, yes, but for the first time I was alone on my own terms. I began the slow, painful process of untangling my life from hers, of removing reminders, of setting boundaries. The heartbreak didn't vanish overnight, nor did the trust issues that would take years to rebuild. But the clarity was mine. I would not let someone else define my worth again. Weeks passed, and the silence that followed the brunch lingered, not just in memory but in how I carried myself. Friends asked how I was doing. I smiled politely, but the weight of betrayal lingered beneath my calm exterior. There were nights when loneliness clawed at me, nights when I doubted my decisions. But every time I remembered that look on her face at brunch, the smirk, the dismissive laughter, the resolve strengthened. I had chosen myself. Eventually, I began to feel a tentative spark of hope. The world felt bigger, possibilities felt wider, and the pain of betrayal became a tool, a reminder of the strength I hadn't realized I possessed. Life was still messy, still painful, but it was mine to rebuild. And one day when I was ready, I would love again, but not as a doormat. Not ever again. So now, as I sit at my desk, reflecting on how quickly life can shift, I share this story because I want others to see that walking away isn't weakness. It's courage. It's self-respect. And if you've been laughed at, dismissed, betrayed, remember this. Your value isn't determined by how someone else treats you. Stand tall. Walk away if you must. And rebuild. And speaking of building, help me hit 5K subscribers, because just like rebuilding a life after betrayal, growing something meaningful takes effort, honesty, and the courage to start over.